Quilt people of the universe, welcome. Glad to see you. How is everybody today? I'm doing really awesome, mostly because I just finished my COVID quilt top. Now, it's not quilted, right? So that'll be happening next, which I'm really excited about. But I wanted to share the overall image with you. I know a lot of you have been following kind of the progression of it and how it's kind of come together, what all the different elements mean, especially personally, right? Because there's a lot of me injected into here as far as my experience in going through all of this and, some of my personal ideas, frustrations, just mindset, things like this as we've been going through this. So if you'd like, I'm going to take a little bit of a close-up look here at the different elements and kind of what they mean and how I arrived at some of the imagery. And hopefully you'll find that interesting. And other than that, I'm wearing nail polish. I've never done that before. This whole year, I don't know about you, but I've just been in this whole mindset of you know what? I've never done that before. Let's just try it. So yeah, I've never had nail polish on before. And so I wanted to do something kind of interesting and fun, right? That was kind of more like tattoos on my nails, just to kind of see what that was like, And I don't know, I don't hate it. So we'll see. That might seep its way into my newfound fashions. It's, I've really been kind of going on this personal journey, a renaissance of me, if you will. I don't know. I just keep throwing things at the wall and see what sticks. Is that it? Is that it? Is that it? Is it happening? I don't know. But it's just fun, right? So let's take sidetrack. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at this and kind of my intention for it and some of my thoughts behind the imagery. How this whole thing started, if you look at the very beginning video of this as I was actually creating it, the whole thing started from my friend Paolo took a photo of himself next to this huge rock formation, right? And it all started with me seeing that photo that he posted on Facebook, and it was like this really large rock formation was kind of like this. I don't know. I kind of looked at it like the guardian of the universe, right? And it was the scale of how big the rock formation was next to how big he was in the photo, right? And so that was the genesis of the entire work. It was the relation of the scale between the person, right, and the tree. Now, I originally started to make this actually a more detailed version of the guardian of the universe, right? And I wasn't able to do that. It just wasn't working. It felt too forced and it felt too literal, right? And so from there, I kept working and working and working it until I came up with this kind of tree idea. And it has obviously, just branches, no leaves, right? So it kind of speaks to death a little bit, if you will, obviously, and then also just the motherboard roots being and how technology is just kind of seeping into every corner of our life, and to imagine, if you will, that even the plants in our universe are starting to become infused and intertwined with technology. So that's where that started from. And then the quilting on top of that was a reference back to my Canadian roots and putting the totem pole, First Nations kind of imagery into that in order to fuse all of those ideas together. Okay, so that's where the project actually started, was from just the tree and the person and the scale as how they were relating to one another, that I found super interesting, right? And it was just the scale was so off, the person was so tiny and the other thing was so big, and it just seemed really kind of the idea that I wanted to express as far as how big things are, how small we are often in the universe, and what that feels like. So Then the next idea that I had is I really wanted to incorporate, let's just turn you around, this cool kind of paper pieced foreground, right? And it's quite complicated actually to create all of these kind of hexagons and polygons and things like this, and then have kind of because that's all it is, right? It's super tight, close paper piecing of those ideas. And so, because I really wanted to incorporate, like if you go back to my Koi in the Moonlight quilt, it's all pieced, right? The fish are, the moon is, all of that. So I wanted to incorporate obviously some traditional quilt work into this, and so that's where that picks up, right? The whole foreground being paper pieced like that, and then inserting these little tiny pieces to kind of like show a ridge line, if you will. And so then beyond that, the midground here, the white, now that hasn't been done yet, and let me show you a close-up of that and what it's going to look like when it's done. Okay, I'm hoping that you're seeing this okay, because it's pretty light, but you can see the same idea of the polygons that are in the paper piece foreground repeated in the midground, right? And how that's going to be essentially the same idea, right? Only it's not going to be paper pieced, it's just going to be quilted, right, with the same repeating idea pattern up above in the white area. So that's what's going on there. I think it'll be super cool, just as far as kind of it echoing with the quilting. I love to do that, to actually pick up the imagery of something and use it into the next field, the next visual field, if you will, of the quilting. So you take the imagery and then you quilt it into the next section that doesn't have the imagery, but then picks up or carries on that same idea. The same thing was incorporated into my coat of arms quilt that I did with the two bears, right? In the way that I repeated the buffalo plaid into the actual quilting. And I was really, really pleased with how that turned out. So I always try and do that a little bit now into my work. Okay, moving on. Okay. The next was these leaves kind of blowing in the wind off into, we don't know, the great unknown, right? And so I originally just started with faces, kind of thinking of, since it's a COVID quilt, the people that have died from this disease during this time. And so my idea was just to have random faces that were just, blowing in the wind and disappearing and moving off into the universe and, essentially leaving this planet, right? And so that's where I started from. But then with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, I really also wanted to bring that into the work as well. And so you can kind of see, like, this leaf has George Floyd's face on it, right? Here's Breonna Taylor, right? And several other of them that I was able to incorporate. Now it's super light, and they get lighter as they move off into this distance. But each one is kind of paying homage to those that we have lost and who have been killed and taken from this planet far too soon. So that's what that is. Let's talk about the person for a little bit, because I think that that's kind of interesting, if I do say so myself. So the person kind of represents me, obviously. But it also speaks more to, and let me just move it over here. It also speaks a little bit to, I think, what a lot of us are going through. Wasn't an earthquake. Operator error. Stop. What was I saying? Okay, so the person, I think, represents a lot of us and kind of what we're going through during this time, right? It's let's be honest, it's been, tough for a lot of us. And so the person is to inject ourselves and the idea of not only how small we are, not insignificant, but just small in the whole context of everything, but also kind of, the energy. You can see the red and the yellow. It kind of like gives this vibrating kind of inner soul being seen as, your auras or whatever you want to talk about it there. And then I added on top of that, the image of violence between humans. My intent for that was during this time, and it's not something I share about a lot, but I've been dealing with a lot of, I don't know, some mental health issues. Maybe. Maybe I shouldn't share that publicly. But I think a lot of us have been dealing with a lot of stress. And as I've shared with a lot of people before, like I have this weird brain and movement disorder that is greatly affected by stress, right? And so it's just it's complicated. So I wanted to incorporate that because it is. I don't know how much I should share here. It is intertwined with a lot of stuff from my past. Okay, so I wanted to show that and just kind of the when you experience, violence or abuse or anything like that, I wanted to demonstrate how it just doesn't leave you, right? It's not over, right? You know what I mean? It still resonates within you. It still stays with you. And so I wanted to incorporate that. And so I had this opportunity on the back of his shirt while trying to show it as wrinkles in his shirt, but also to take that opportunity to show that this person still carries the trauma of the past. Even though they're strong and moving forward, there's still part of that resonance within them of their internal energy and what they're carrying that you just carry with you as you move forward. So I wanted to incorporate that into some of the work as well. Maybe too much information. Thanks for oversharing. Always will. Too much of an open book. Okay. Next, I wanted to, and this was again going back to the origins of the COVID quilt. I wanted to show and speak to just the health and issues regarding health that people are going to be experiencing with COVID. And so the best way that I thought to do that was to kind of just deliberately spell out a heartbeat, right? And so I used the opportunity for this actual heartbeat, which is these lines here, right? Beep, beep, right? Of the heartbeat kind of disappearing off into the distance, but then also just having that be essentially my mountains in the background, right? And so I thought that that was a cool idea just to, have everybody who's been dealing with, sickness and things like this into the work. Now, the background, right, what I call the sky web, that is the primary focus of the quilt. And so that's why when I was adding all these other elements, and whether it's the, guy's shirt or the faces in the leaves or things like, or the quilting of the First Nations in the tree, that none of those are the first thing you see, right? I really wanted that to be way turned down so that the first thing that you see, the major impact of the work, is actually the sky web. Let me tilt it up a little bit here, right? Because the sky web is the great unknown, right? And that was the major point that I wanted to make with this work, is just, we don't know where it's going. We don't know what's even really happening right now, because there's so much, different sources of information that are going on right now, and you just don't know what to believe. And so the great unknown and the sky web was that. And I know I've said it before, but I love that the bleak sky, if you will, is done in a hot white rather than a black, which would be far more, I think, traditional for a lot of artists to go that direction. But I wanted it to be white hot, right? And so that's why I went with the white, with the kind of fluctuating colors in red and orange to speak of, danger and, fire, things like this. So that's what's going on in the background here. And then, of course, just the clouds, which actually really focus the eye, right? And so if I just left this white all the way across, it wouldn't have the same effect of like bringing you in and visually focusing you. And so I was trying to get that so that people would focus directly at the middle, right? Rather than kind of their eye off going into the periphery. And I also wanted to kind of hide the goose, right? And so the gray goose, he's a Canadian goose, but he's done in gray color, is up in the corner there, and I wanted him to be seen, but again, not the first thing that you see. So when you see the clouds, right, it gives you this kind of ominous feeling as they're kind of revealing, but then getting, black and dark out to the very corners. And again, I feel like that visually focuses the eye right into the middle of the work, which I think is super cool. Okay, so then the last part is the goose itself, right? And so the goose represents hope. The goose represents my connection with my Canadian heritage, and so it is a Canadian goose. It is done in First Nations artwork, which again, I'm not First Nations. I know people ask me about that. I just really, really, really love not only their art, but also what it represents for them and who they are as people overall. Right? I love that. So I wanted to have that represented here. And again, it's the only place in the entire quilt where I've actually used blue. Okay? And so this kind of electric blue that's just a little shimmer, right? I really wanted to be interesting and kind of a real departure from the rest of the work so that it would be its own thing, right? And its own thing in this case is hope. Right? And so it's kind of the hero, if you will, and it's kind of swooping in, but you're not sure what's going to happen yet. And so that's what's going on with that. And now I just have to quilt it. Yay me. Oh, here, just make a bunch more work for yourself. Oh, I'll definitely do that. Anyhow, that's kind of the great overview of the work, right, from beginning to end, how I kind of arrived at a lot of this imagery. I hope that you've enjoyed going on this journey with me. I've enjoyed doing it. Like I said, the quilt top is now essentially done. And so I played a little bit with not putting any batting in it, just putting a quilt back on it without the batting, but I'm not sure. I haven't quite decided on that. It depends on how much, I want to add to the actual, contrast to it with the actual quilting and whether I'm going to do that. I don't know yet, clearly. Hello? If you haven't decided yet, just say so. Okay, I haven't decided yet. Anyhow, so that's it. I hope that you like it. If you're watching this on YouTube, oh my gosh, I'm like a dozen people away from 10,000. And once I get to 10,000, then YouTube will actually start promoting me and my work, which would be super awesome. And I really appreciate it. So if you can hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me. And then my new fabric line, like I posted on Facebook, I'm looking for a few social media influencers and things like that to send a bundle to of my new fabric line Leaf, which I should have here in studio very shortly. Okay, so that's what's going on. That's what's coming up. After this, I imagine I'm hopefully going to quilt it here before my fabric line shows up. But regardless, the next thing that we'll be doing after this is diving into new quilt patterns, traditional quilt patterns. Like I said before, they're going to be a little more difficult this year, which I'm super excited about. Yay! Like how often do we actually, rather than play to the lowest common denominator that everybody can do this project, that we really focus on, the masters and the true artists amongst us, because there's plenty of them and I feel like they don't get enough really interesting work to do that challenges them in a new way. So that's what I'm going to be doing next after I'm done this, and I hope you're excited about it. I am. If you want to reach me personally, you can always find me at quiltingcowboy@gmail.com, and thank you so much for your support. Bye.